All right, welcome in the building, everyone. We're back at it again. 8:30 Central Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Have a guest in the building. I'm going to introduce him. But you guys come on in. Actually, this time around, I'm actually on business travel, and the time did not align, so I'm in my car. And we're making it happen. That's dedication. So, I appreciate you guys joining us once again. We show up Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays at 8:30 Central Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. But actually, next week we're going to change to Mondays and Wednesdays at 8:30 Central Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, and sometimes Fridays. Sometimes Fridays. So, we're making adjustments, but we're still, showing up for you guys, looking to give you guys the information on a timely basis. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of times I'm sharing stuff, what I'm going through in present day. I have my good buddy Kenny Crump on the line. I've known him for over 10 years. And, he'll be able to reference, kind of what he experienced in his 20s, 30s, and 40s. Kind of give you guys some background about his story and the success that he's experienced within his industry, right? But then if he's able to share a story about present day, he's able to do that. But I bring people that I look up to, and they reason why I look up to them because I can see myself. I can see myself, experiencing some of the same things that they experience, and I'd like to leverage their knowledge and see if we can grow together. Essentially, what I've been talking to you guys about is that we're stronger together, right? But I live that as well. So about 10 years, at least 10 years ago, maybe 13 years ago, is when I first met Kenny Crump, and we just been good buddies ever since then. We stayed in contact. We met in Columbus, Ohio, and I met him through his mom. She was my pastor back then, and his dad. He This is a story about how my pastor's husband helped me get my first car, right?
Wow.
And we
Wow.
went to the dealership together, and I was about to get a car that had a check engine light on. He was like, "It might not be a good idea."
Never heard this story. This is
Oh
good.
yeah, yeah. And then we went to this place called Riverside in Columbus, Ohio. And we got a really good car. It was an '03 Monte Carlo. And that was because
Wow.
of your dad. Got me on it. Got
You
me,
might have to let him see this video. I don't think he knew that.
yeah, no, that he made it a worthwhile experience of buying my first car. Yep.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep. So once again, we're going to cover this topic, wisdom and life tips for your 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I'll give a quick overview, and then I'll let Kenny introduce himself, and then tell us what the topic means to him. But once again, you guys, it's the LaFred effect, where we have real talk, we go deep, and we build forward. All right. So for your 20s, 30s, and 40s, the way I take this is, you know, early as possible, you want to take as much risk as possible. What does that look like, right? It could be, taking your money and investing it, right? When you have less responsibilities, you want to start getting in, involved with investments early on as possible. Of course, you want to, learn as much as you can, but the risk is, you might not know as much, but you're getting out there early, right? So, your 20s is as soon as possible, you taking as much risk as you can to learn, essentially just to learn, right? You might not do everything right. I didn't do everything right. When you first start something, that doesn't mean you're going to be great at it. A lot of times when you first start something, you're going to fail at it. Sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like that happens. For instance, like, my first marriage didn't work out. You know how we get deep, you guys, like, and there's nothing to it when you actually grow past something. You can tell the story and you can be real because it's going to make a difference in somebody else's life. Like, I got married around 24 in my 20s. Like, I didn't really see a marriage growing up. And I did my best at it. I do my best at everything, but it didn't work out. But that doesn't mean it ends there. I have a 4-year-old, and we co-parent very well, my ex-wife and I. So that doesn't have to be in the story if something doesn't work out, but you just continue to improve, right? You improve in communication. You improve in how you handle situations. And then, everything, what happens, but what you do with that information can make the difference on the rest of your life. It's a journey. Okay, now I'm in my 30s, right? What I've like learned over the span of 12 years, starting like 18 to where I'm at now, I like understood what worked, right? For me, education opened up many doors in my career. Working in my occupation, it's allowed me to invest in real estate. Real estate has, set me apart. So I want to continue to do more real estate, right? I did been dab in the stock market, but I understand there's a lot of risk in that area. So I'm kind of cautious here and there, right? But I'm still involved because it's still like early on for me. So I can still make a certain level of mistakes, but I understand high risk in early 20s, medium high in my 30s, and then medium in my 40s, and then medium low in my 50s, and then in my 60s is like low. It's like, I'm just looking at interest alone. I'm looking at just collecting. Like I got a lot of stuff paid off. I'm just looking to collect, from my, cash flow from my assets, just collect assets. Like I'm not doing as aggressive investing as I am in my early 20s and my early 30s. And then, I can still do a good bit in your 40s, but remember that time frame or in your aggression level that I mentioned, because that's essentially what the age is about. We're not going to be here forever, and we do have responsibilities, right? And you want to be able to position your family in a good position, right? It's not just about, myself and how I grow, but it's about the impact that I have on others, right? So that's essentially what the 20s and the 30s and the 40s is about to me, overarching. And of course, we'll go into more details based on the questions that you ask. That'll give us direction on, what you guys are thinking, and then we'll be able to align with that. But, that's enough about me. We got Kenny in the building, and he'll be able to give you guys some background about what's worked for him, and where he's at now, and then also how this topic relates. So take it away, Kenny.
All right, great. Well, no, Fred, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely an honor. Love what you're doing with LaFred Effect, and you go again serving, giving back to the community, and again, not being a gatekeeper. Sharing that knowledge. So that's something that I love to do. So was excited when you asked me to be on. So again, everyone, my name's Kenny Crump. I'm a father first, man of faith, as well, husband. As far as my occupation and what I do, I'm I hate to use this, but I was an entrepreneur probably before it was trendy to be an entrepreneur. So we're celebrating 20 years of business, actually in August this year that we've been in business. But my primary business is Gym Skills. Gym Skills is a gymnastics and tumbling company as the foundation, but we do everything from after school programs to cheerleading, dance, anything that you can do in a gym, you can do it in Gym Skills. Franchise the business. We're nationwide now. We're in 3 states. We have 5 locations total, and continuing to grow. So that's my main business and what I do. But Gym Skills has afforded me the opportunity to invest in other businesses, as well as in real estate and other opportunities there. So that's what I do. It's what I love. I've been an entrepreneur straight out of high school, to be honest. So I never went to college or anything. I've always just been more self-educated. I love to read, love to learn. So I know a little bit about a lot of things. So that's really my background. I have a 4-year-old. I think I said I was a father. So I have a 4-year-old. I've been married for. Man, my wife's gonna get on me on this one, but we've been married since 2007, but we've been together since we were 18. So I'm 42 now. So when I talk about my 40s, just know that I'm in my early 40s, so I got a lot more learning to do. But yeah, it excites me to talk about this topic because again, I feel like throughout life I'm always learning, always collecting information and tips and gems from different people. But when it comes to myself and um, you know my years of my 20s, I just think about exactly what you said, Fred. Was I was taking a lot of risk. I mean, when you're young, you don't have responsibilities. You're desperate, you're hungry, so you're going to take anything they throw at you, whether that be opportunities for your career, different investment opportunity, whatever it is, you're going to take it. So, when I was in my 20s, growing my business, I made a lot of mistakes, and that's the time you want to do it, right? You want to do it when you're young and you don't have responsibilities. So when I think about 20s, I think exactly what you said, Fred, is, it's that time where you're going to, bump your head, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. I believe it's important, when you're in your 20s also to, if you make that mistake, try not to make it again. You learn from your mistakes, or better yet, you learn from other people's mistakes. So get you a mentor, get someone that, you truly look up to, that's similar to what you said, Fred, and how our relationship is. I may be in certain positions that you can see yourself in. So, it's good to surround yourself around people like that. Because what you'll find in your 20s, and I did, is that most of the times when you're young, that's when people are, that's when they want to help. If you're 40 years old, asking, somebody, hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? They're gonna look at you like, what's wrong with you? So, and nothing wrong with learning, in your 40s, but I'm just saying,
yeah,
in your 20s when you want to do that. So, anyways, I bumped my head a lot, throughout my business career. Just again, not really having a lot of examples of business owners in my family, but I also had a very supportive family. So, like Fred said, that's a big part of my life is my parents. They've always supported me from day one. I was a gymnast, and that's how I got into the business, is because I started at the age of 4, and I competed in gymnastics all the way up until I was 18. And then at 18, I started coaching. And, there wasn't one time where my parents were like, hey, you need to go to school, or you need to do this. They're like, work hard, whatever you're going to do, and you just have that work ethic. So I think, as long as you, maintain a good work ethic, early on, in your 20s, that's going to roll into your 30s, and you're going to make, better decisions, as you get older. So, after I bumped my head, over the years, once I turned 30, I was like, okay, I'm making a little more money now. I've always heard, that real estate is to me, real estate is I don't want to say fastest way, because there's no like get rich quick scheme, but that to me was the easiest way to grow your wealth, especially if you have good credit. You've been on a job, for so long, or you have a steady income, you can typically get a loan. So that's what I started doing in my 30s. So now I should say I was blessed. I bought my first property when I was 21. And what I did there, and this was before it was called house hacking, all these trendy terms. So I was 21, but I was at 2003, 2004 or something. But I bought a property, and I had my 2 brothers stay with me, and they paid the rent. So if you guys are watching this, brothers, yes, you guys paid that rent for several years while I was, growing the business at that time. But again, called house hacking now. So I did that early when I bought my first property, and, just kind of continue to grow my real estate portfolio in my 30s, as well as growing the business. And, when you're in your 30s, you learn from your mistakes you made in your 20s, and you don't do the same thing, right? And again, growing the real estate portfolio, to then I started getting into the stock market. And I think one of the things that I always knew that I wanted to do early on, and these are just things that all of you business owners or futures business owners should know, is that in order to have a sustainable business, there's three things you really want to make sure you have. And that's a good accountant. You want to have a good relationship with a banker, and you also want to have a good attorney. You have those three things, that's going to set you up for success, because it's in their best interest that your business continues growing so you can cut them checks and you can get loans. So I made sure early on that I always did that. And again, there's a cost to doing business. So you're going to spend that money up front, but again, it's going to pay off in the long run. So I know we'll get into more questions, Fred. So now that I'm in my 40s, I've created a lifestyle where I can, it's essentially I'm kind of coasting, right? So I'm out of the business as far as day to day, and we're able to hire amazing team members. And again, when I say all this, I did nothing by myself. None of this would be possible without the amazing team that we put together with Gym Skills. So I'm out of the day to day, and I'm really I went from coaching youth and kids to now I coach adults essentially, and I teach them how to open gyms and start businesses and invest in all those things. So I truly enjoy it. I know that I'm blessed. I know that this isn't. It's bigger than me. This could not happen on my own. So I just really enjoy answering questions, and I'm looking forward to being able to add some value to someone's life after this conversation.
Good deal. Good deal. Yeah, we really appreciate that background, man. That was everything, to really understand where you're at and how things are going for you. So I really appreciate that. This is our time to answer questions. So we have our first one. You can see it on the screen.
Yep.
Good deal. Good deal. So I'll read it off for us, and then you can take a stab at it. It says, what career risks were worth taking in your 20s, and how did they shape your path in your 30s or 40s?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a really good question. So what I would say is that when I was in my 20s, one of the biggest. It's funny. I had lunch with a friend of mine yesterday and was talking about this, but I had to sacrifice a lot of friendships and relationships when I was in my 20s. That's the time where everybody's kicking it. Everybody's having a good time. You're hanging out, you're doing this or that. And for me, I've always been just driven and kind of kept my eye on the prize. So I knew that in order to be in the position I'm in now in my 40s, I had to just sacrifice a lot of those relationships. So I wasn't hanging out, I wasn't going to, this place or that place, and nothing wrong with it if that's what you choose to do. But for me personally, in order to grow my business and get to where I wanted to be, I guess I can say it. I wasn't a great friend. I wasn't answering calls all the time. When people, and again, I had to make up, some lost time. Now in my 30s, I'm like, hey man, why isn't so and so answering the phone? And they're like, Kenny, I haven't talked to you for years. I'm like, hey, I was growing an empire. Like, what do you want me to do? But that to me was something that I knew that I had to do. And again, the most important relationships that I wanted to make sure I cultivated, of course, my family and my wife. I've always dedicated that time. But when it came to a lot of friendships and other relationships, unfortunately, I had to make that sacrifice in my 20s.
Good deal. No, that's very insightful. You know what I'm saying? Like, having self-awareness about, where you're at, where you're trying to go, and then what you have to cut out. You might not consider it distractions, but it's distractions at different levels. You know what I'm saying? We all pick and choose what we give our energy to, and then what we have to kind of put on the side to, maybe have an opportunity to go back to, once we reach our goals, or maybe just, just, call it a sacrifice, and it is what it is, and just let it pan
Mhm.
out. You know, let the cards fall where they may. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
For true relationships, you can always pick them back up. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And that's right, and that's what happens now, right? Because as you get, and we all hopefully grow, in life, and we evolve, and and that's what happened with all those relationships that I really thought I wasn't putting any energy into. As we got older, it's like, man, my buddy yesterday that I mentioned, he said, man, what you were doing, we all looked up to you, like, man, Kenny's on his grind, like he's doing it, like he's doing what we want to do. We were out, doing what we do, but we really respected what you were doing. So yeah, you did it the right way, and again, that's what worked for me. So I always want to make that point, like we're all different. This is the life that I chose, but again, it worked for me, and but again, it doesn't matter if it's relationships, it's time, it's finance, whatever it is, you have to make sacrifices early on if you want to, if you plan on being in a certain position later on.
absolutely, absolutely. So we're getting ready for the next question.
Mhm.
I really appreciate the transparency, the honesty, because you're basically articulating what it takes. You know what I'm saying? If people want
Absolutely.
to really have a success and reaching their goals, it's not
Yeah.
just going to be that you can do anything and everything. And sometimes it's about making those hard decisions. So here is our next question. It says, if you could give one piece of advice to someone in their 20s, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say do it now. I mean, that sounds cliche or very simple, but whatever your goal is, whatever your dreams are, you want to move to another city, a bigger city with more opportunities. You want to start that business. You want to apply for that position that you don't think is for you. Like, do it, do it now. Because again, if you don't do it, somebody else is. So you had to seize the moment. You don't know how long this opportunity is going to be there or whatever it is. So do it now.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Go ahead and get the next question up, and I'll give my takeaway on that. Like,
Mhm.
we're really big on taking those small steps, and you
Mhm.
don't have to be perfect, right? You just got to
Yep.
get started, right? I emphasize that a lot to the group. It's about getting started. So
Yep.
I really appreciate you mentioning that. It just goes to show how you know even if we have different voices, the perspective is very similar, right? The
Absolutely.
mindset, developing that mindset in order to take the proper results,
Yep.
proper steps, right, to get those results, and then in order to experience success at different levels. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Success for you looks different for somebody else, but
Sure.
it definitely has something to do with being able to, spend time with your family, to be able to travel, to be able to
Yep.
give more, to be able to experience the retirement, based off different descriptions that you have for the ideal lifestyle, right?
That's it.
It all starts with taking those steps, right? And
That's
developing
right.
that mindset to continue on. Go ahead.
And you know what? That just made me think about it. We talked about investing earlier. So again, the sooner you start investing, the quicker you're going to see the results. Whatever that is. So invest, but keep it in there. We've all heard of compound interest. So you get it in there early. 19, 20. By the time you're my age, hey, it's over.
Exactly, exactly,
It's going to be amazing. So yeah, do that.
exactly. Here's the next question. It says, the 20s can feel like a mix of excitement and confusion. How do you learn to trust yourself during those years?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and you're right. I can think back to being in my early 20s and trying to find myself in different ways, because again, it's an interesting time because you think you know everything, but then you realize a couple years from then, you're 20. By the time you're 23, you're like, man, I didn't know anything. Then you're 30. So, and even now, like me at my age, I'm like, man, I don't know much at all, especially being a father now. So, but in your 20s, that feeling there. Um, I go back to you are who you surround yourself with. You are who you hang with. So find you have to find someone that a mentor. Find somebody that you can shoot ideas by. Find somebody that's going to give you sound advice. When you're in that confused state, or you're not sure, like if I want to go this way or that way, and that could be a family member. That can be a friend. That can be therapist. Whatever it is. But find that thing that's going to help you get through it, because again, time moves fast. That's another thing. When you're in your 20s, every year, the older you get, the faster time's going to go, or at least it feels like it. So yeah, just get that, find that tribe and tap in, because there's always going to be someone that wants to help. But now, if you then on the other side, if you don't ask for anything, you don't speak up, then you're going to be in the same position that you were in. So you got to speak up.
No, you're absolutely right. And we do talk about how important mentors have been in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't go without saying multiple times how, being able to have someone that's, a level higher than you, and even a level higher than that, like just to get as many perspectives as you can, based off of what people have experienced in different decades of their life. You know what I'm saying? Like all the things you mentioned, like, counselors, mentors, they all play a huge part in our lives, parents as well, and having someone that holds you accountable, right, in your younger days, because we're not perfect, we're going to make mistakes. And like you said, you just like hope that you learn from those mistakes, and then you do the best what you can with the information that you have, and there's really nothing more you can do.
It truly isn't. So yep, you're right about that.
All right, next question. What mistakes did you make in your 30s that taught you something lasting?
Yeah, so I know we've been talking a lot of finance, so I'll give you guys a business mistake I made in my 30s that I still look at like, man, I wish I didn't do that. But yeah, so for me, I would say that one of the big mistakes in this, a lot of people may not agree with this. So, I had an opportunity to purchase some commercial real estate. And, it's funny. I thought I was going to be ready to purchase this real estate 10 years before that. So I thought 25, I was like, man, I'm ready. I can do this. God had a different plan. So in my 30s, I think I was 35, 34, maybe. I had opportunity to purchase Gym Skill, the building, actually this building you see behind me. And it was an SBA loan, right? So some of you may be familiar with SBA, but it's kind of like it's an entry to get it's a way to get your foot in the door, but it is a awful loan. It's probably one of the worst loans you could do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So again, you don't know what you don't know. I had to do what I had to do, to get the building. But I would say that, looking back, I wouldn't have done that loan because number one, it was a variable loan. And again, you don't know what you don't know. So, get the loan and then you got to live with it for a little bit till you get out of it. You're making more money. So anyway, that was one that I would say, again, do what you have to do to get your loan or whatever you're looking for. However, I would say definitely do your research on all these products that these lenders are offering you, because there's just a lot of little hidden things that you may not read, or you'll find out down the line that is not in your favor. Or put it like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. No, that's some really good insight. You know what I'm saying? SBA loan is like one of the most common ones for small business owners. You hear about it advertised a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah. So for you, just a little bit more information on that one before we move on to the next question. Was it the interest rate that mostly made it like not so much of a good loan?
So the loan was amazing when the economy was, SBA loans, any variable loan, it's all based on prime, right? So again, at that time, I didn't care. I didn't know what prime was. I just want to get a loan, So when things were good, it's like, oh man, I'm only paying, X amount a month, no big deal. It wasn't much, but the moment, economy shifted, prime shot up, it doubled. My payment doubled, and we're not talking small numbers. So it was like, whoa, this is crazy. But again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So like I said, I was able to get out of that loan, thankfully, and got in there. So when you're not in a variable, you're probably going to be in a conventional, type of loan. So now we're in a conventional, in a better position. But I mean, it just cost me a lot of money, at the end of the day. But
Right. It helped you get started, but
yeah,
another gift that a lot of people possess that practice is pivoting, right?
for sure.
And also not only pivoting but persevering until
Yes,
you can make that pivot. So
that's right.
that's what that showed,
Mhm.
early on in that stage that you were in.
Yep,
And that's a muscle as well. So of course you have other opportunities to show perseverance and pivot, and you were able to do it better, based off of, your past experiences,
that's
right?
right. And that's a
Yeah.
great point, because it's funny talking to, after I got out of the loan, I'm talking to, our CPAs and different people, and they're like, man, that's amazing. You were able to, refi, get out of that. But there's people who are still in it, trying to figure out a way out, because it costs to get out of these situations, So again, we talk about making some of the right moves and pivoting. So early on, I've always been someone that just lived within my means. I never, I'm not a flashy guy or anything. So that afforded me the opportunity to have enough, of a nest egg to where I could get out of a situation like that. So I'm very fortunate in that way.
That's a good point. That really helps clear things up on how you're able to make those type of moves, right?
Yep.
I'm a minimalist myself.
Sure.
And I'm fortunate to be in this position because, I always desire to build generational wealth, but sometimes, when you take on responsibilities, it might not afford you to do that.
Yep.
So, people in their 20s should definitely take advantage of having low responsibilities and living within your means as a
That's right.
minimalist, right? You can always get stuff, but having stuff depends on the timing. You got to have the right timing on getting stuff.
Yep.
Sometimes you can end up getting stuff too soon, and it becomes more of a burden than a
Yep.
blessing. And that's what
That's
you
right.
want to avoid, especially in your early 20s and 30s, right?
You're absolutely right about that. Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's so critical. I mean, yeah, just stay within your means. That is, oh man, and it's hard. It's funny. I was just talking to, so our staff. We have a lot of young people who are in college, just getting out of college, graduating high school. And I was talking to a young man, and he's in I think he's going to an HBCU. He's I think criminal science, or political science. I'm sorry. He's studying political science, and it was funny. I was just sharing, some dropping a few gems on him, and I said, hey, something that I know as Black people we like to do when we get a little money, we have to show it, And I said, don't be that guy. I said, show it later. I said assets, not liabilities. Get out.
Exactly.
He was like, oh man, but Kenny, I gotta show it a little bit. I gotta stun on him. I was like, oh man. I said, I get it. When you first, get that, big check or whatever it is, you want to do something. And let me not say I enjoy travel. I enjoy nice things, but it's still within, within a certain parameter. I'm not gonna, go over, that budget or whatever that I have. So
Exactly, exactly. So we got this question, and then we'll take one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. I really
Mhm.
appreciate you tapping in with us, Kenny. It's been a pleasure,
Absolutely.
man.
For
You
sure.
know,
No
you're
doubt.
really dropping gems. You know, and it's um, it's something that I learned early on, maybe like 15, at least 15 years ago, that there's books and there's theories out there, but true wisdom comes from experience, right? And then
Mhm.
when people live it out, I think for me, it sinks deeper, right?
Yep.
When you're like when you say hard work, right? It means more to me than somebody saying hard work and they've only experienced it for a certain period of time.
Right.
It carries more weight when someone has put in the hard work, or even if they say be consistent, right? it
Yep.
it takes somebody that has been consistent to say it for it to hit deep. So I really
Mhm.
appreciate everything that you've been sharing with us, and
Absolutely.
it's definitely hitting our ears and sinking in. So
For
thank
sure.
you. Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
appreciate it. So
Anytime.
we'll have this question and then one more after. It says, "What are some lessons that hurt in your 20s but made you better later on?"
Mm. That's a great question. You know, for me, I think back to in my 20s. So I've always been, I've always had discipline, right? I've like I said earlier, I've always been the type of person that, if I want something, I'm going to go after it. I'm not gonna waver. I very rarely get distracted. Um, so when I think about, I guess, some things that hurt in my 20s, I mean, I think back to, man, I wish I would have started investing in my 20s, because to be honest, when I bought my first property at 21, I guess I wasn't even looking at it as an investment, because it wasn't like somebody said, "Hey, real estate is the way to go." I just got it because I didn't want to stay in that small apartment anymore. Me and my brother, a small 2-bedroom apartment. But over time, I was like, "Oh wow, that is an investment. Let's move out of here and let's keep it. Let's get another house, and we'll rent that one out." So I guess lessons that hurt. I guess just not starting earlier. When it comes to just doing more. I, I've done okay, in life, but I've spent a lot of money, over the years. But that a lot of that money in my 20s, I could have invested a lot of that. So I'd be probably further along than I am now. But then again, I always say, God makes no mistakes. Everything happens for a reason. So I don't know if man, I wish I could think of something that truly that hurt in my 20s. I just feel like everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. So there's no hurt here. It's just it's just a lesson. It's another lesson learned.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I know for me, I totally agree with what you said. Everything happens for a reason, and if anything, we're supposed to hit our head against the wall. We're supposed to fall down so that
Yep.
we can learn.
Yes, sir.
And the sooner we learn, the better, right? The
Yep.
earlier we learn, the better, right?
Right.
And literally lessons, the lessons, the mistakes that we make, right? And then when we learn from them, it compounds, right? Like
Right. Yep.
like sometimes we can make a mistake with lower risk, but then it can show up in a uh high stakes situation, and you can kind of pull from your prior experience to
Mhm.
ensure that the situation turns out in your favor. I know for me, conflict resolution is like one of my skills.
Okay.
Recently I joined a new team,
Mhm.
and there's 2 points of it, two perspectives, right? When you're replacing someone, the team might miss that person, or
Mhm.
the team might be accepting of change, right?
Right.
So I'd never been in that position before where I'm replacing someone internally, and I'm like walking right in on that. But just understanding that every opportunity is an interview, right? So they don't know me,
Mhm.
but based off of their concerns, I can like let them know, what I bring to the table. And if I don't know something, I can leverage, previous relationships that I made. And from that encounter, one of my superiors went to my manager and told my manager that they appreciate my composure, right?
Wow.
They said, when they confronted me, it was in front of a big group, and I held my composure, and they said, attitude is half of it. And he just, you got attitude and aptitude. He just said it like that. But I know for sure that I handle myself well. And, I gave my manager a heads up, like, hey, he's coming to speak to you. This is what happened. And, all is well, right? And I got that report, and my manager said, keep up the good work, right? So being able to, handle yourself in different experiences early on, even if you make mistakes, that's still gonna push you forward in the future,
You're
right?
right.
When you develop, how to handle things in a certain way, right? So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fall on your face, because it'll just continue to make you a better person, right?
That's right. That's right. I like that.
All right. Here's our last question. What's one belief you held in your 20s that you had to unlearn in your 30s or 40s?
That's a good one, and this might tie in with the other question about the hurt. But so in my 20s, early on, I always thought I could do everything myself. I felt like hey, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Nobody can be me. I got it, and that's a recipe for disaster. You can't grow and scale a business that way, or really, look at yourself as a business. You can't grow as a person, that way. So, in my 20s, that was my mentality. But as I got into my 30s and now my 40s, I realized that everyone's not going to be me. So I don't have to keep this. I'm always going to have a level, a standard, for everyone that I bring, around me. However, I meet people where they are, and I try to build them up from there. So it's not like the expectation is not going to be, hey, be Kenny like right now, maybe we'll get there to this point, with some training, with some development with this. So yeah, meet people where they are, help them grow, pour into them, build them up. And that's what I've done, in my 30s and 40s, and it's paid off exponentially. Whereas before, I'm just getting rid of people left and right. If it wasn't working out, hey, good luck. I'll see you later. But now, I really truly enjoy, just building people up, meet them where they are, and help them grow.
Exactly. No, I can resonate with that very much. I currently have about 5 employees that's helping me build the brand, the LaFred Effect, and it's going very well. I've been able to train, and like you mentioned, there is a certain level, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But what I've learned is, like you said, not everybody is like us. So you
That's
got to,
right.
develop them,
Have
and it
patience.
requires a level of patience, right?
Right.
It requires a level of gentleness and high level of effective communication.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm definitely learning that. And I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate those who rise to the occasion, that wants to continue to grow and
That's right.
build something great. It does come with its challenges, right? Sometimes you have to scratch your head, and you got to reflect, and did I make the right decision? Did I,
Yeah.
did I articulate myself well, or I might have, went over the top here and there, but it's definitely all about growing and getting better, every
Right.
step of the way.
That's right. Yep. No, it's so big. We need each other. You can't do anything on your own. And again, what did you say earlier? You said, was it work together, or you better together, or
Exactly, we're stronger together for sure.
stronger together? There you go. So that's man, that's a great way to end it.
Yeah, no, and another thing is, like, we can go fast by ourselves, right? But we can go further together.
Further together. You're right about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I heard that early on too, and that stands true. So, yep.
Exactly. Well, Kenny, is definitely a pleasure, man. I really appreciate you joining in. Maybe we'll have you back in the future. I'll give you a heads up on different topics that we're going to talk about. And if you feel like it resonates with you, you want to be able to get something off your chest, we'll be able to bring you back. I know for sure teaching, each one teach one, it not only helps, the broader audience, but it reinforces what we know. And then you'll be able to apply it to your life. I know you're going to have a really good day tomorrow. You're going to be like, just got done giving, and that's what it's all about. You know what I'm saying? So we'll definitely welcome you back in the future. It's definitely a pleasure. Here at the LaFred Effect.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Here at the LaFred Effect, we have real talk. We go deep and we build forward. Until next time, stay focused, stay grounded, and above all, stay real. Peace.